We have some pretty big breaking news in the NHL. Another NHL team has been shut down temporarily due to exposure, and we have our first head coach going on the COVID protocol list. We'll discuss this news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some big breaking news around the NHL. The Minnesota Wild have been shut down until February the 9th. So another team, it gets taken out here, due to being exposed and having some players test positive. And now we have our first head coach testing positive as well. The NHL's also come out with announcing some new protocols here to try to slow down and prevent the spread here so that hopefully they can get through their season a little bit more effectively. So let's dive in and take a look at what's happened. So, of course, the Minnesota Wild ended up with several players ending up on the COVID protocol list, so they were indeed shut down. The earliest they will play now is February the 9th. Very well could change. It depends on how everything goes. Obviously, when players end up on the COVID protocol list, it does not automatically mean they've tested positive. It just means that they could have tested positive, or they could be a close contact, or they could have been an exposure that they want to be precautious with for a little while until they can show that they did not pick up the virus. So it's a safety protocol more than anything, but in some cases they are positive tests. Now, so the Minnesota Wild becomes another team here that's off the radar for a little while trying to get through this. And then we get news that Sabres head coach Ralph Krueger has tested positive. This just broke right before I started recording this video. I was prepared already to talk about the Wild and other things that were going on and related to this, because there's a lot of players on the protocol list now that are out of action, at least temporarily. And now that's the first time this has come up so far during the NHL's 2021 return season here. So that's not good news. I mean, obviously Krueger as a coach is an older man, 61 years old. So he's not in the highest risk category, but of course the older you are, the higher risk that comes with getting this. So it's certainly not good from that perspective. And it just goes to show that it's not just the players here that are taking on some risk. It's everybody that's involved, and everybody that works in the arenas and everybody that works for those teams in any capacity are certainly eligible. As we know, this virus does not discriminate against anybody, and it's just one of those unfortunate circumstances. So we certainly wish Ralph Krueger a healthy and speedy recovery. Let's hope he gets through this without having any severe symptoms. And we'll see. So obviously he's going to be out of action and won't be able to coach the Sabres for some time. Obviously they have their own little issue they're going on with some players as well. But when they do get back to playing here, obviously the rest of the coaching staff will have to take over for him for a little while until he's cleared. So the other problem here is, well, we have a growing list of players on the COVID protocol list, and it's kind of becoming an issue. I believe we're at a total of 90 players that have been on the list so far. And now I believe it's about 40 that are actively on this list. And I'll show it to you here, courtesy of TSN, to show you who's currently out of action related to COVID-related issues. Again, I caution you, it doesn't mean these players are positive. It just means that they could have either tested positive, been in close contact with somebody who did, or could have been exposed enough that they want to be precautious here and have them isolate for a little while until they can determine what needs to be done next. So let's take a look here. Obviously, some teams have a lot of players. New Jersey's the big one here. And some of these other teams that have recently been exposed, like Minnesota, we could see that list grow in the coming days. But if you take a look here from the snippet from TSN's website, essentially we'll go through here. Obviously, the Sabres have of course, head coach Ralph Krueger, but they also have Taylor Hall, Rasmus Ristolainen, Brandon Montour, and Toby Reeder are all on this list, so they can't play for the time being. Obviously, the Sabres were quite upset with how everything went down. Of course, New Jersey was right before the Wild were the last team to have a big situation here, and they ended up with several players being added to the COVID protocol list after Sunday's game, where the Sabres had played them a couple times in a row, and they just were not pleased with how everything went with the testing and all that. I don't really think you can blame New Jersey per se. It's just a matter of how everything works and how everything's set up. So it's a growing problem here. Now, besides the Sabres, you've got Chicago. They're slowly getting over their issue, but they still have Adam Boqvist, Ryan Carpenter, Lucas Wallmark on the list. We've got Tyson Jost of Colorado, Andrei Sekera of Dallas, and Philip Zadina of Detroit. The Kings have a few here in Athanasiou and Lizotte. And then, of course, now we have the Minnesota Wild, including new captain Jared Spurgeon Eriksson, Foligno, Johansson, Bonino, and Bukestad. So that's a big chunk of their team now in isolation, so that's not good. And then, as I mentioned, New Jersey has 17 players on this list, so that's a major issue for the Devils organization. Difficult to say how long it's going to take for them to get through this so they can continue playing here. But 17 players, I'm not going to list them all for the sake of time, but that includes guys like Jack Hughes, Travis Zajac, Ty Smith, Sami Vatanen, Nikita Gusev, Jesper Bratt, Kyle Palmieri, Severson, Zaka, and some others. So it's a big chunk of their team. They just got Mackenzie Blackwood back from this situation as well. So obviously they're in rough shape, and it's not a good situation with New Jersey. Now looking at a few other places here, we've got Pittsburgh with John Marino. Like, their blue line's beat up enough as it is from injuries, and now they lose Marino to that. So that's a big blow. Of course, Alex Pietrangelo in Vegas has been on this list for a little while now, so hopefully he's getting through this. And then you've got Washington had more players, but they did get a few back, but they still have Kuznetsov and Samsonov that are on this list. I believe it was revealed Samsonov had tested positive. I'm not sure in regards to Kuznetsov. And Winnipeg still has Dubois on this list, but of course, that's because of quarantining issues from traveling from the United States. We don't have any reason to believe at this point that Pierre-Luc Dubois has tested positive, been in close contact. He's just going through the protocols because of changing teams and going from the United States to Canada. So it's certainly a growing problem for the league. Now, there's been some new enhanced protocols announced today. Unfortunately, the testing is not changing, at least as of yet. I know there's been a lot of people calling on the NHL to move to the rapid testing model instead of the other tests that they're using right now. But the problem is, and it's not a perfect solution here, is that rapid testing gets you results faster, but apparently those tests do produce a lot more false positives and they're not as accurate. So clearly that's not really, an ideal situation either. Like, I'm not sure what they're going to do, but there is some that are, people that are suggesting they make changes, and I think the NHL is willing to look at this and see what needs to be done. I'm just not sure that that's a perfect setup. But for right now, they are taking some extra cautions beyond what was already in place. So for right now, they're removing the glass in behind the benches. Clearly, airflow and air circulation and all that is a bit of an issue when it comes to this virus. The bench area is a place where the players are in closest contact for the longest period of time. So that's obviously an area of concern. There's already been some mention about making some adjustments. So without having the glass there, that will allow airflow to be a little bit better, which is hopefully going to be helpful. In regards to the puck going over the glass when it comes to the referees being able to call like the over glass penalty, referees are still going to be able to do that, but they're going to have to be absolutely certain that the puck would have gone over with it being there like it was before. So, could that cause issues? And could it be a controversy? Yeah, that stuff like that can always come up. But in the sake of safety, it's better to have that, I guess, if you're going to have better airflow and kind of reduce the risk of transmission a bit. Now, that is being implemented right away. I know the games that are taking place tonight, they're already in the works, or some cases already done, having a glass taken out. Thankfully, that's not too difficult of a job and can be done rather quickly. And there is also talk as well, and I'm not sure how quickly this will get into place, but Elliot Friedman did mention this morning, that they're looking at adding some air purifiers as well in the bench area where they have those big HEPA filters in them, and they do apparently filter the air quite well and reduce a lot of unwanted things in the air by upwards of like 50%. So if you have a few of those around each bench, that'll certainly go a long ways to help keeping the air cleaner and obviously better airflow and kind of helping reduce the risk there as well. Now, as well, the NHL players and coaching staffs are going to be able to arrive at the rink a little bit later. They're not going to be there any more than an hour and 45 minutes before game time unless they're going in early to get treatment for an injury. If that's the case, they can get an exception, but an hour and 45 minutes is the maximum amount of time they can be at the arena before the game. So obviously, players have their routines. Some guys like to get there really early, depending on the time that the game is starting and all that, but they have to have that in place as well. The less amount of time that they're kind of around each other for, in higher risk situations, the better. They don't want to have too much of that. Obviously, that reduces things, so that's good. They're also being encouraged to hold any team meetings whenever possible virtually, whether they be on a game day or an off day. So I know it's not the greatest situation, but still, if you have everybody in their own individual rooms or at home or whatever, then they can certainly have done a meeting virtually. They can review game film. There's all kinds of things they can do, talk things out, like they would have like in a meeting room. So that's being encouraged as well. And then, of course, the dressing rooms might have to be adjusted. They're kind of trying to space things out more to make sure there's a minimum of 6 feet in between each player's stalls. They may have to bring in, if necessary, depending on each rink's room and the size they have and what they can do. They may have to bring in some portable lockers as well if they need to help kind of spread things out. I believe from what we've seen a little bit and behind the scenes, I think there's like a plexiglass barrier, at least there should be, in between each player's stall too. They kind of help the airflow from going back and forth. So those are what they're doing for right now. I mean, I do think there ideally could be a better testing solution. The problem is that it takes so long to come back. Then they're tested every day. So you just... it's hard to get this perfect. It's just the problem is, So I don't know what they're going to do, but there could be some testing changes implemented here soon, but they need to really figure that out before they proceed, because at this rate, based on the science, based on the results in other everyday situations and what we know, I'm just not sure that the rapid testing is perfect or ideal, but maybe we'll see what they do here, because they got to figure something out to keep everybody safe as possible, which at this point is becoming more and more challenging all the time. And as they said on Sportsnet last night, I know Brian Burke said he's pretty much convinced at this point that we're going to see an NHL team make the playoffs without completing their 56-game schedule. If it gets to the point that any teams do not complete their full games, that they're going to go to a points percentage-based model for determining playoff spots. And obviously there's a time that's given up here in the calendar right now at the end of the season to make up games if need be. There's like a week to 8, 9, 10 days in there that they can do that. And I think we'll see a situation like we saw with baseball, perhaps, that they will only make up the games if they're meaningful. So, for example, if two teams are scheduled to play and they're both long out of the playoffs, then what's the point? It's not going to make any difference into the standings. So we may end up seeing games eliminated off the schedule or not rescheduled based on that scenario, which is the advantage, I guess, of waiting till the end of the season, kind of seeing and determining what you need to have to kind of get a fair result that's, even as possible across the board. So let me know your thoughts on this developing situation. What do you think the NHL needs to do to kind of get things back on track here and hopefully cut down the risk of transmission? But we all knew going into this that without being in a bubble format, that it's going to be difficult. And as we've seen, if you follow it as well, the women's hockey with the NWHL, they were in a bubble format in Lake Placid with a much smaller group, obviously a lot less teams. And I don't know the full content around their bubble and their protocol. I mean, I was trying to watch a little bit of the games and follow the results and stuff, but I don't know exactly everything that was in place for their safety rules. But now they've canceled and halted their tournament because it's not even going to be able to finish. We already seen 2 teams pull out. And then last night they announced that they were canceling the rest of the games due to safety concerns, that there was just too much COVID being passed around and the cases were getting to be a little bit more out of control, and it was in the best interest of everybody to do that. So even some bubble situations are not perfect to be able to keep it out. So like I said, I don't know exactly what they were doing and all what the protocols were, but certainly that's disappointing for them. And as you can see, there's hard to come up with a perfect solution to work flawlessly. But the NHL's bubble format the first time around last fall worked like a charm. They got through that with really everybody unscathed. With everything changing the way it is now, it's hard to imagine they can get back to that with where everything is today. So let me know your thoughts down below and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.